Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the steam-slicked world of a 16th century Ottoman bathhouse, also known as a hamam. You'll feel the marble floor cool beneath your feet, the scent of lavender and olive soap hanging thick in the air, and the gentle hiss of steam rising all around you. You've barely wrapped yourself in a thin pastimal towel, and already someone's shouting about bread prices. The floors are warm, the walls echo, and you're wondering if you're supposed to make eye contact with that man in the corner rinsing his armpits with such intensity. Oh, and a fair warning, you probably won't survive this. Not because of plague or invasion or anything dramatic, but because the humidity in here is high enough to cook a dumpling, and you, dear listener, are the dumpling. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from, and what time it is where you are. Drop it in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the cobbled alleys of Istanbul, past a stall selling pomegranates and a dog that looks only half interested in barking. A curved dome rises above the rooftops ahead. It's time for your weekly hamam visit. In Ottoman cities, public bathhouses were more than just places to wash up. They were hubs of social life, business deals, flirtation, and occasionally, mild political espionage. And today, you are just a tired shoe merchant's apprentice who hasn't had a proper wash since last Thursday. At the entrance, an attendant greets you with a nod and hands you a linen pastimal, which you do your best to wrap around yourself with moderate success. There's always that one flap that doesn't tuck right, and frankly, you're not convinced your dignity is entirely secure. You step into the soyunmalik, or changing area, a high-ceilinged wooden gallery with private cubicles where men are already unrobing and storing their clothes in carved wooden lockers. There's a faint draft, and you try not to think too hard about eye contact or towel positioning. Soon, you're barefoot on a warm stone corridor, led toward the central chamber, the hararet. This is the heart of the hamam, where the heat is strongest, the architecture most intricate, and the gossip juiciest. A dome arches above you, punctuated by little star-shaped glass windows that let in a filtered glow. Sunlight slices through steam, casting everything in a buttery haze. The marble underfoot is heated from beneath by a kulhan, a furnace deep in the bathhouse belly, stoked day and night with wood and olive pits. You sit down on the edge of the göbektasi, a massive heated platform in the center of the room where bathers lie, sweat, and socialize. It's shaped like a great white sun, radiating warmth and secrets. A man near you sighs and stretches his arms like he's auditioning to become a roast chicken. The heat seeps into your bones, and your pores open up like little tulip blossoms. Someone beside you begins to chat idly about a neighbor's daughter and the disappointing quality of this season's cucumbers. Another person snorts and insists that Mustafa the grocer has been watering down his vinegar again. You don't know these people, but their voices wrap around you like steam, comforting, intrusive, and oddly relaxing. The bathhouse culture here is old. Very old. The Ottomans inherited it from the Romans, who were absolute fiends for bath time. The Ottomans added their own touches, like rosewater spritzes, sandalwood soap, and a towel-folding method so elaborate it may qualify as a minor art form. Bathhouses were meticulously designed, with layered chambers that moved from cold to warm to searing, like a polite descent into sauna purgatory. And of course, there are rules. So many rules. No shouting. No spitting. No scrubbing someone else's back unless invited. Yes, that had to be written down. Historians still argue whether some hammams enforced gender-based time slots strictly or with a wink and a nod. After all, a few well-placed bribes went a long way in Ottoman urban life. The attendant returns with a wooden bucket filled with warm water and a soft goat hair mitt. You brace yourself. The scrubbing begins, and it is intense. You feel like a radish being prepared for pickling, but you emerge moments later from the assault pink-cheeked, shiny, and perhaps with slightly less epidermis than you arrived with. The attendant murmurs something about your posture, cracks your knuckles like he's tuning a lute, and then leaves you to rest on the marble once more. Around you, people chat about a new tax on chickens, someone's cousin who tried to open a coffee house without a license, and the scandalous length of a certain widow's veil. There's a deep comfort here, not just in the heat, but in the rhythm of life itself. You begin to understand why Ottoman officials believed a good hammam visit could cure melancholy, or at least distract you from your debts. Above, a bird lands on one of the dome windows. Perhaps it's curious about the strange rituals below, or maybe it just wants a nap in the sunbeam. You let your mind wander like that bird, circling lazily overhead as steam rises and water splashes and people talk about everything and nothing. You could stay here forever, or at least until you shrivel like a prune. The marble is just the right kind of warm, like a fresh loaf of bread from the oven, minus the yeast smell, and you're starting to meld into it when another sound joins the constant hiss of steam. A sharp, deliberate clack as someone drops wooden slippers, called nalin, onto the floor. You turn your head slightly, careful not to let your towel betray you, and you see a young man hobbling across the bathhouse, balancing two copper buckets. He's one of the apprentices, maybe 16, looking half asleep and wholly overworked. His job is to make sure the kulhan, the great furnace under the bathhouse, never stops roaring. That fire is the heartbeat of this place. The Ottomans didn't mess around with engineering. These weren't random pits of hot water. They were architectural feats, designed down to the last steam vent. The floors you're sitting on, hollow. Beneath them run serpentine channels of hot air and water, all fueled by that kulhan. Think of it like early radiant heating, except with a higher risk of catching your slippers on fire if you linger too close. Every hammam has three main rooms: the soymalik, changing room, the aliklik, warm room, and the hararet, hot room, where you are now. Each serves a different purpose in the dance of sweat and soap. You're currently marinating in the hararet like a well-seasoned kebab, which, ironically, is probably what you'll be craving after this. The dome above you is no accident either. Those little glass stars serve both beauty and function. They let in light but keep the heat in, and they create an eerie acoustics effect where every whisper bounces in mysterious ways. Which is precisely why you've now heard the same rumor about the spice merchant's secret second wife 3 times from different corners. That Göbektasi, the big marble slab in the center, is technically called a navel stone. It's the warmest spot in the whole place, thanks to being directly over the furnace. Most bathers lie on it like cats on a sunny windowsill. Some even nap there. Just don't roll off. One man did last month, and while he survived, his pride has not. You shift slightly, wiping a bead of sweat from your eyebrow. A bathhouse worker walks past with a silver ewer, pouring warm water over a man who's mid-back scrub. The water glints in the light, catching tiny rainbows in the mist. The smell? A mix of eucalyptus, lavender, and faintly, oddly, smoked eggplant. Someone must be cooking nearby. A group in the corner is playing a game involving the stacking of wet soap bars while telling increasingly improbable stories about how they got their bruises. That one, says an older man, pointing to a purplish mark on his shin. Pomegranate cart accident. No one believes him, but he's committed to the bit. Steam drips from the ceiling. Occasionally, one of the tiny glass stars overhead fogs up entirely, then suddenly clears, revealing a sky just starting to shift toward afternoon. A pigeon waddles across the edge, glancing in like it's debating a quick scrub. You start to pay attention to how the water is handled here. No running taps. Instead, attendants use kurna, deep marble basins, filled from decorative spouts with either hot or cold water. You mix them as needed with a copper bowl and pour it over yourself, creating your own miniature waterfall. It's oddly satisfying, like the world's slowest faucet with better acoustics. There's something theatrical about the whole process. The clatter of ewers, the hiss of steam, the low rumble of conversation that turns into a whisper near the walls. Everything is deliberate, measured, almost rehearsed. You begin to understand how people could spend 3, 4, even 5 hours in here. It's not just bathing. It's life, softened and warmed. Historians still argue whether every bathhouse followed the same room layout or whether some neighborhoods preferred their own signature flow of hot to cold chambers. Some texts suggest imperial hammams had secret passageways for the royal family to sneak in unseen, avoiding commoners and their complaints about mutton prices. Others believe that's wishful thinking by later romantic writers. Still, you can't help but imagine a sultan tiptoeing in slippers, towel wrapped like a turban, grumbling about his bunions. Back near the wall, an elderly man is gently humming an old folk tune while methodically scrubbing his feet with what looks like a lump of pumice. His rhythm is slow and steady, almost meditative. You try to match his pace, but quickly lose count after scrub number 3. Patience, it seems, is part of the ritual. The longer you stay, the more the air itself changes. It thickens, like soup nearing a simmer. Breathing slows. Voices drop to murmurs. Someone chuckles, and the sound spirals up the dome, breaking the trance before fading again. This is not just about getting clean, it's about being enveloped. The bath becomes an extension of the city's pulse, its breath, its sweat. A splash, then another. 2 boys start flicking water at each other until one slips dramatically and falls into a basin with a loud "OOF." The room erupts in laughter. Not cruel, just the kind of communal mirth that lets you know this place belongs to everyone. Even the klutzes. You wipe your forehead, lean back against the wall, and try to remember when you last felt this calm. Maybe never. In a world of dust, debt, and poorly stitched sandals, this place is the Ottoman Empire's greatest luxury. Heat, water, and silence, interrupted only by soap and stories. A soft slap echoes through the room as an attendant, barefoot, wiry, and wrapped in a plaid pastimel, slaps a bar of olive oil soap against a coarse scrubbing mitt. He gives you a knowing glance, then beckons with a single tilt of his chin. You're up. You shuffle toward the Göbektasi, aware of every footstep on the warm, wet marble. This is where the real magic happens, or the real exfoliation, depending on how you feel about dead skin. The man is a telek, a professional bathhouse masseur and scrubber. His entire job is to know exactly how to remove a decade of grime, while keeping just enough pressure not to make you yelp. Though he looks like he hasn't slept since the last sultan's coronation, his hands are expert, circles on your shoulders, firm strokes down your back, and finally, a generous slathering of suds that somehow smells both like fresh rain and old cedar chests. This soap? It's made with local olive oil, of course, but there's often a twist. Depending on the region, people added wild thyme, laurel berries, or in some cases, powdered amber. Not that you can tell. Your nose is too busy trying not to drown in foam. As your telek works, he hums something low and rhythmic, like a lullaby for your joints. Every once in a while, he mutters to himself in Turkish, perhaps an observation about your posture, perhaps a lament about taxes. No one knows. You're too zoned out to care. Soap recipes back then weren't exactly secret, but they were closely guarded family traditions. A good soap could make a merchant rich. A bad batch? Well, let's just say that once, a shipment of improperly cured bars caused an entire caravan to smell like burnt garlic and goat. That particular soap maker was politely asked to consider a new career in rug weaving. The soap here has a luxurious slipperiness that feels engineered for naps. It lathers richly, even without modern detergents, thanks to the precise ratio of olive oil to lye. The lye was often made by soaking wood ash in water and filtering it, a messy process best left to apprentices and enemies. And the water, always warm, always pouring. You notice how carefully the telek uses it, cupping it from the kurna, tilting his hand just so, never splashing. He creates tiny rivers over your back that find their own paths between vertebrae, like wandering streams. At one point, he pauses and rubs something along your arms, a gritty, earthy scrub that smells faintly of lemons and wet leaves. Could be ground apricot pits, or powdered pumice, or whatever the bathhouse had in surplus that day. Historians still debate the exact blend of exfoliants used in different regions. Some texts insist on eggshell powder, others on sand from specific riverbanks. Once he's done, he douses you in water again, and your skin squeaks in protest. You sit up, blinking, suddenly aware that you have never, ever been this clean. It's almost disconcerting, like a lizard that's just shed its skin and isn't sure if it still knows how to blink. In the corner, 2 elderly women, heads wrapped in floral kerchiefs, are whispering rapidly. One raises an eyebrow at you, possibly judging your scrubbing form, or possibly because you're sitting like a stunned potato. You nod respectfully, just in case. A soft breeze from an open vent stirs the steam, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of mint. Someone must be brewing tea in the soymalik. You resolve to find them later and beg a cup, or at least loiter nearby until offered one. The bathhouse isn't just a place to bathe, it's also a place to listen. And there's always someone whispering about something. Rumors travel faster in steam. You catch fragments. A neighbor's mysterious new slippers, the price of saffron, whether the butcher's youngest son is actually studying medicine or just hiding in the spice market again. One particularly animated discussion involves soap recipes. Apparently, someone's cousin in Adirna swears by goat milk and rose water. Another swears at it, claimed it left him smelling like a dairy garden for days. Historians believe many of these recipes were shared between bathhouses via traveling barbers, spice traders, and ambitious aunts. Recipes were tweaked based on available ingredients and superstition. Laurel for cleansing, clove for strength, camphor if you had an evil eye problem. And if you were out of everything, just olive oil and gossip. Your telic pats your shoulder. Done. You rise, a bit wobbly, wrap your towel, and return to the edge of the harem. You settle beside the marble basin and pour water down your arms, letting the drops trace cooling lines across your newly pink skin. You feel different now. Not just clean, light. Like your bones have been aired out. And maybe that's the point. In a world where laundry is done by hand and public fountains double as social media, the bathhouse is one of the few places you can simply sit, soak, and exist without expectation. Even the architecture seems to say, slow down. The acoustics, the heat, the rhythm of poured water, all conspire to lull you. You wonder if anyone's ever written a love letter to a soap bar. Probably. People wrote odes to much stranger things in the 1500s. Looking at you, guy who penned 47 verses about an especially shiny melon. But no one here is in a hurry. There's no clock. Time passes by the rhythm of water and laughter. A splash, a sigh, a secret passed between suds. You lean back and let the dome's warmth seep into your spine. The steam shifts again, curling along the walls like lazy ghosts in linen, and you wander, still slightly slippery, toward the soga cluck, the cooling room. Your towel clings in all the wrong places, and every breeze feels like a flirtation from the air itself. You pass through an archway, from warm mist to a cooler, drier air that smells of rosewater and linden wood. It's dimmer here, lit by amber-hued lanterns and one lone skylight that filters in the last smudges of daylight. The floor tiles are cooler, too, patterned in repeating stars. You slow your pace instinctively, your footsteps suddenly ceremonial. The cooling room is where you recover, hydrate, and, if you're like many bathgoers from centuries past, gossip like it's an Olympic sport. A cluster of men sit near a low marble table playing a lazy round of tavla, the Ottoman version of backgammon, occasionally pausing to toss barbs or complaints about bread prices. You find a spot on a cushion that sighs under your weight, and watch as an older woman unwraps a parcel of sweets. Little diamond-shaped bits of lokum, dusted with powdered sugar, passed around with the same gravity as a royal decree. She offers you one with a raised brow. You nod, of course. It's pistachio, maybe rosewater, possibly both. Your teeth sink in, and your eyes involuntarily flutter. It was common, especially in larger hammams, to serve tea or sherbet in this space. Delicately spiced drinks intended to replenish the soul as much as the body. Sherbet, not the frozen dessert, but the Ottoman drink made from fruit syrups, herbs, and occasionally a hint of vinegar, depending on what your aunt believed cured gout that year. Pomegranate and tamarind were favorites, but in some regions, people swore by sour cherry and basil. A strange choice, but you respect the chaos. The bathhouse's cooling room was also the court of whispers. People here didn't just trade beauty tips, they traded news. Who was marrying whom? Which governor's daughter had disappeared for a week and returned wearing Venetian gloves? Who'd seen the Sultan's astrologer buying unusually large amounts of garlic? And, critically, whose soap smelled suspiciously like last week's floor polish? There's a man near the fountain now, talking with exaggerated hush. He leans in, tells his companion about a certain Kaya, a steward, who's been secretly importing his soap from Crete. Claims it's made from olives grown in volcanic soil, he hisses, but it just smells like moss and regrets. Historians still argue whether such soap rivalries were exaggerated for dramatic flair or truly mattered to status. But we do know that wealthier families often had preferred soap makers, much like one might have a tailor or a discreet dentist. Some even had bars stamped with custom family crests. Imagine lathering your underarms with an eagle-shaped emblem and calling it hygiene. You stretch your legs out and sip from a brass cup of water left on the table, noticing it's been infused with mint and a single clove. A refreshing detail, or someone being passive-aggressive about breath? Hard to say. The Sogakluck is also where plans are made. Business ventures, marriage proposals, or in one famous case, a plan to bake a 500-egg pastry to impress a visiting poet. Spoiler, the poet was lactose intolerant and unimpressed. A bathhouse in Bursa reportedly saw a group of merchants negotiate the shipment of 200 rugs to Alexandria entirely in towels and slippers. And while the bathhouse was technically divided by gender and often by class or schedule, the gossip didn't care. Word traveled fast between the morning men's session and the afternoon women's session. A piece of news could make the rounds through steam faster than any postal pigeon. You overhear a woman grumbling about her neighbor's new imitation Aleppo soap. Another insists her cousin's batch turned their cat blue. You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. It was a very clean cat. The bathhouse even had its own economy, of sorts. Small-scale vendors often sold oils, perfumes, fresh fruits, and, yes, home-blended soap outside or in the entrance corridor. A particularly entrepreneurial woman in 1587 reportedly patented, claimed, a saffron lavender soap that could purify skin and soul and ward off envious stares. It sold well until someone slipped on a sample tray and blamed the devil. Historians debate how many of these smaller bathhouse businesses were female-run, but many records suggest that women dominated the soap trade in local markets. They made, tested, and sold their products with fierce pride. Some even added crushed pearls or gold dust for weddings. Less for cleanliness, more for the subtle flex. You shift again on your cushion and notice how your skin still tingles from the scrub, like it's breathing better. A nearby conversation drifts your way. A debate over the best season to cure soap. One swears by spring, when the olives are young and arrogant. Another claims winter allows for more patient fermentation. You're not sure, but you'd listen to either of them lecture for an hour with that tone of hushed expertise usually reserved for watchmakers and mushroom foragers. There's a soft pop in the air as someone uncorks a small vial of rose attar. A single drop is dabbed on each wrist. You inhale reflexively. Floral, yes, but with a bitter undertone like nostalgia or the smell of your grandmother's chest of letters. A woman nearby notices you sniffing the air and winks. That's the good stuff, she says. 3 coins a dram. Made by a widow in Adirna who claims it came to her in a dream. Of course it did. And so, you sit, clean, warm, and caught in the swirl of voices, memories, and the oddly reassuring scent of soap that may or may not contain powdered apricot pits and a dash of ambition. Outside, the day wanes into amber. Inside, you feel timeless. The light from the skylight has dimmed to a warm gold now, as if the sun is dipping its toes into the Bosphorus and taking its sweet time about it. You shift again on your cushion, and the linen towel, by now your only loyal companion, makes a soft sighing sound against your skin. Someone begins humming. A low, lilting tune that sounds like it belongs to a lullaby, or maybe a forgotten folk song about a woman who fell in love with a man who sold soap and disappeared during tax season. It echoes faintly in the stone chamber, curling around the hushed gossip like steam around your ankles. Let's talk about the soap. No, not the suspicious moss-scented one from earlier. The real stuff, the creamy, dreamy, slow-cooked heart of this entire operation. Because in 16th century Ottoman life, soap wasn't just a hygiene product. It was identity, status, family recipe. And if your great-aunt's cousin found out you bought mass-produced bars from the bazaar, well, may the gossip be ever gentle. You remember seeing the soap seller outside before you came in. His wooden cart stacked high with neat blocks in various hues, creamy ivory, speckled olive, a few with odd pinkish marbling that might have been hibiscus or might have been last week's leftovers. A few were stamped with delicate floral patterns or curling Arabic script, the kind you'd almost feel bad using on your armpits. Almost. So how did they make this miracle substance? Start with olive oil, always the base. Not the cheap stuff either. Ideally, you want first-press oil from the Aegean, bright green gold and thick enough to coat your fingers like warm syrup. Next comes the lye, known then as kul suyu, or ash water. Lye wasn't something you picked up from a store. It was homemade by pouring water through wood ash, preferably from burned fig branches. Because, obviously, only fig ash gave soap its divine silkiness. If you tried pomegranate ash, it might clean your sins as well as your skin. Or it might just stain your tub. Historians still argue whether early Ottoman recipes borrowed more heavily from Arab or Byzantine techniques, especially when it comes to the soap curing process. Some were firm believers in the cold method, where the mixture sits and solidifies naturally over time. Others insisted on cooking the soap for hours in massive copper vats until it thickens like stew. Given the number of burn injuries recorded in merchant ledgers, the latter was more popular and more exciting. After the soap was poured into molds, wooden boxes lined with linen, because even your soap deserves a nap, it would rest for several weeks, sometimes months, depending on the season. Winter soaps were denser, longer lasting, and considered ideal for gifting. Summer soaps were lighter, often infused with herbs like thyme, mint, or crushed rose petals, and in rare cases, saffron. Because nothing says luxury like scrubbing your elbows with something more expensive than your house. You catch a hint of lavender from a passing towel. A woman walks by trailing scent and damp hair, and you remember, lavender was prized for its cooling properties. Doctors, who were about 40% science and 60% vibes, swore it helped balance your humors, especially if your humors were anxious, restless, or chronically dramatic. There's a rustle as someone behind you unrolls a fresh bundle of soaps tied in twine. Each bar bears the faintest mark of hand pressing. One even has a thumbprint in the corner. You stare. That's either a terrible flaw or an artisan signature. You decide it's charming, maybe even collectible. Soap wasn't just for scrubbing. It played a surprising role in medicine. Physicians of the era prescribed specific soap blends for skin conditions, joint aches, and even heartbreak, though that last one might have just involved giving someone a bath and a new perspective. Some formulas were mixed with goat's milk, honey, or ground almond. There's even a note from a 1582 apothecary recommending a soap of ashes and bitter melon to remove curses and persistent body odor. 2 birds, 1 bar. You stretch your arms and notice how smooth your skin feels now. No mystery flakes, no residual city dust, just you and your well-oiled pores. Someone beside you is rubbing a pale orange soap bar into a netted cloth with determined little circles. It smells like citrus and something sharper, maybe laurel? Bay leaves were a common addition, said to ward off infection and jealousy. A tall order for something dissolving into bubbles. One fringed tidbit floats into your memory. Some soap makers in the empire reportedly added powdered oyster shells to their blends. Not for exfoliation, but because they believed it bound the soul to the skin. No one's sure if that's beautiful or deeply unsettling, but either way, it sold well among poets and mystics. Now imagine you're a newlywed in 1550 Istanbul, standing at your mother-in-law's bathhouse reception, being handed a dowry gift that includes 10 bars of custom soap, infused with musk and shaped like tulips. It means she's welcoming you, or threatening you. Historians still argue. Outside the cooling room, the muffled sound of water being poured reminds you that bathhouse life was a full-body ritual. From the scalp to the soles of your feet, everything got attention, including your ears. Some elite soap blends included jasmine or basil oil specifically for softening the earlobes. Because in high society, even your earlobes had standards. A child runs past, trailing giggles and bubbles. His mother shouts after him in a tone equal parts love and scandal. You smile. The air smells of warm stone and lemon now. Another breeze sighs through the lattice window, cooler this time. You sip the last of your sherbet. It's plum this round, tart enough to make your eyelids twitch. You press your fingers to your skin. Still slick, still soft, and, perhaps most importantly, still carrying the faint, sleepy scent of soap with a story. A breeze coils lazily through the latticed windows now, tickling your neck as you lean back against the warm marble. You're not sure what hour it is. Time here has melted, like soap left too long on the basin. Your fingers still smell of olive and bay leaf, and every inch of your skin feels softened, as if you've been slow-cooked into a dumpling. Somewhere nearby, a group of women has gathered near the corner pool. Not for washing, not even for soaking, just for talking. And not just any talking. You're drifting into the rich and whispery realm of 16th century bathhouse gossip. Now, don't be fooled. While the hamam might look like a sacred temple of serenity, with all its arches and incense and puddled light, it was also the imperial equivalent of a group chat, just hotter and wetter. It was here, in this sauna of secrets, that the real news of the city percolated. Someone clears their throat. A name is dropped, quietly, carefully, but still loud enough to draw the tilt of 3 heads and a raised brow. A nobleman, apparently, perhaps too fond of his neighbor's pastries, perhaps also too fond of the neighbor. You can't quite hear the whole sentence, but you catch something about a widow, a broken lattice, and a very suspicious cat. You feel your ears perk up involuntarily. Shameful? Maybe, but also culturally enriching. You see, in the 1500s, most of Istanbul's male-dominated courts and trade circles excluded women. But the hamam? That was their court, their social salon, their town square. Here, politics could be unpicked like braids, and reputations could be scalded clean or permanently stained. Some women came here just to catch up on rumors. Who was about to marry, who had secretly divorced, scandalous, and who had given birth to twins after only 6 months of pregnancy. Surely a miracle, or at least an error in math. There were hierarchies in gossip, too. The best informants? The servants of the rich. These women moved between households, privy to whispers, bedroom arguments, odd midnight snacks. Next best were the bath attendants, present but invisible, moving silently between scrubbing and oiling, always listening. If you tipped well, you might leave with a tale or two. If you didn't, well, you might become the tale. One mainstream historical account describes how in 1557, a vizier's daughter-in-law allegedly orchestrated a matchmaking plot entirely within a hamam, setting up her cousin with a wealthy perfume merchant using coded compliments and cucumber slices. It worked. They married the next spring. Historians still argue whether this event sparked a minor political alliance or was simply good hospitality. Now, you're probably wondering, what about imperial gossip? Did news from the palace itself trickle into the bathhouses? Absolutely. Especially in elite hammams near the Topkapi Palace, where the wives, concubines, and favored courtiers of the Sultan would sometimes visit under heavy guard. Their presence alone sent ripples through the marble. Attendants might describe their silk robes in hushed awe, or recount the brands of perfume they wore, rose attar imported from Persia, or ambergris bombs that cost more than a house. One fringe tidbit that refuses to disappear involves a eunuch spy who supposedly disguised himself as a female masseuse to overhear treasonous whispers in a women's bath. Whether this is true or the Ottoman version of urban legend, no one can say, but it's juicy enough to survive 5 centuries. And here's the fun bit. Gossip wasn't just idle chatter. It was often weaponized. A well-timed rumor could ruin a merchant's chances of securing a bride for his son. A whispered suspicion might lead a neighborhood to boycott a certain baker's rolls. Words, once steamed and shared, had a tendency to stick. Even seemingly innocent conversations had undercurrents. If one woman asked about your soap source, she might really be asking about your husband's trade route. A compliment on your towel embroidery might be laced with envy. Or worse, an attempt to determine if you were now wealthier than her. Bathhouse gossip had structure. There were unspoken rules. Never talk while being scrubbed, bad luck. Always lower your voice when naming a sultan. And if someone coughed 3 times, the topic had officially become too hot. Time to pivot. You hear a laugh ripple through the space, high and breathy, followed by a shocked no, and the unmistakable thwack of a wet towel against skin. Gentle chaos. A woman walks by with coals smudged around her eyes, her smile lazy from an hour's worth of storytelling and lemon water. In some cases, gossip even crossed gendered lines. While men and women bathed separately, information sometimes transferred through spouses. A husband might overhear a merchant complain about a tax hike at his hamam, and his wife, told later over dinner, would share it with her friends the next day in her hamam. It was like a steamy, centuries-old game of telephone, only with more nudity and better snacks. You're not sure how long you've been eavesdropping. Sorry, passively absorbing cultural data, but you start to recognize rhythms in the conversation. The soft rise of intrigue, the long, contemplative hum when someone makes a wild claim, and the rapid-fire whispers that follow any sentence containing the word inheritance. Suddenly, there's a shift. The talk turns to soaps again. Apparently, someone's cousin's sister invented a lemon rose formula that cures rashes and stubborn lovers. The group hums approvingly, and one woman says she'd trade her husband for a lifetime supply. Everyone laughs a little too hard. You exhale. This isn't idle noise. It's ritual. Therapy. A way for women who rarely had a public voice to stretch their thoughts and weave stories into the fabric of daily life. And if some of those stories were exaggerated, well, you're in a room of mist and myth. Everything here is softened around the edges. The light is even gentler now, filtered through steam and thick with the scent of crushed basil and old secrets. You close your eyes. Somewhere nearby, a story is ending. Somewhere else, another is just beginning. Your skin hums now, pleasantly overcooked like a well-simmered stew, as you lean back into the warm stone. A sleepy haze hangs in the air, but your mind, gently buzzing from the tales you've overheard, follows another thread now, one a little more tangible than whispers and eyebrow raises. It begins with a scent, sharp, floral, and just a bit bitter, like someone tried to bottle the essence of early spring after a thunderstorm. That, you quickly realize, is the soap. Or rather, one of the soaps. For if gossip is the soul of the hamam, then soap is the skin, the thing that touches everyone, seeps into every crevice, and tells you, in its own lathery way, where you are and who you might become. Soap making in the Ottoman Empire was not just some background craft. It was a respectable and surprisingly competitive trade. Everyone used soap: the rich, the poor, the noble, the merchant, even the camel handlers who only bathed twice a month but swore by the stuff. Cities like Aleppo, Bursa, and Izmir were famous for their artisanal soap recipes, passed down like family secrets, or the correct method of folding a borek. The base? Always olive oil. Reliable, abundant, and lovingly greasy. It lathered gently, not aggressively, more a buttery caress than a foam explosion. Then came the lye, which, if you're wondering, was often made by leaching wood ash with water, filtered through cloth, and carefully adjusted by the slightly nervous eye of an experienced soap maker. A few too many pinches, and your soap could remove more than just dirt, like, say, your dignity, or your outer epidermis. But once you got the balance right, oh, the possibilities. Dried lavender from the Anatolian fields, crushed bay leaves, rose petals, lemon zest, even goat's milk or powdered clays for texture. Each bar told a story, and not just of scent, but of geography, trade, even religion. For Muslims performing daily ablutions, purity mattered. Cleanliness was spiritual, not just hygienic. Soap wasn't just for bodies, it was for souls and social standing. One soap recipe, preserved in a 16th century merchant's ledger, called for the ashes of grapevine branches, 3 types of olive oil pressed at different stages of ripeness, and a dried blend of saffron and violet petals. It was supposedly used by the concubines of the Sultan himself, and cost more than a new pair of shoes. Historians still argue whether this formula actually existed, or whether it was marketing fluff used to jack up prices for gullible nobles. If so, that's a very early form of influencer culture, and hats off to them. There were quirky additions, too. Ground-up coral, which supposedly improved circulation. Goat fat, for extra moisturizing, though it left you smelling a bit pastoral. And in one curious fringe case, powdered oyster shells, which someone claimed soothed the temper and made the elbows noble. Not the skin, the elbows. You can't make that up. Or maybe someone did. Soap-making workshops, known as Sabinhain, dotted the empire, some connected to mosques or public bathhouses themselves. Apprenticeships could take years, with young boys learning the sacred art of not boiling off their eyebrows. The best soaps were aged, like cheese or wine. A bar cured for 6 months had a smoother lather and richer scent than one rushed to market. And just like perfumes today, soap was status. Wealthy women might display imported bars in ornate porcelain dishes, not even using them, just showing them off like decorative peacocks made of fragrance. Men compared blends like car enthusiasts. Yes, my soap uses early harvest olives from Mount Ida and rosewater distilled only by widows under a crescent moon. But beyond the luxury, soap had practicality and danger. One accidental misstep in chemistry could cause a bar to burn rather than cleanse. Records from a 1571 Bursa guild meeting mention a batch that had to be recalled after unexpected eruptions and redness. No lawsuits back then, just firm scoldings, economic ruin, and eternal embarrassment. Of course, for the average bathgoer, your soap might be simpler. A little olive, a little bay, maybe a flower or two if your cousin knew someone in the spice market. You'd store it in a tin or cloth wrap and bring it with pride. Even a humble bar could spark compliments. And, naturally, gossip. She's using clove oil now. Very bold. I hear it promotes fertility. Or maybe just nose tingling. It wasn't uncommon for hamam staff to craft custom soaps on request. Want something to soften calluses? There was a blend. Need a bar that would disguise the smell of fishmongering? Also a blend. Trying to send a passive-aggressive message to your mother-in-law about body odor? Oh, there was definitely a blend. And the scents weren't just for pleasure. Certain ingredients were believed to have medicinal properties. Chamomile for rashes. Mint for headaches. Frankincense to ward off bad spirits, or at least bad moods. One popular blend included crushed juniper berries and salt, used not only for exfoliation but to ward off the evil wind, which was blamed for all manner of joint pains and melancholy. Soap, then, was more than hygiene. It was art, identity, prayer, seduction, even passive rebellion. A girl might switch to a more mature scent before her arranged marriage, hoping to suggest worldliness. A widow might return to her favorite floral blend, reclaiming joy. A teenage boy might use an aggressively spicy soap just to prove he could survive it without crying. You're nudged out of your soapy reverie as someone places a small copper bowl beside you. Inside, a fresh bar of honey lavender soap glistens faintly, cut into a little spiral shape. The bath attendant gives you a knowing smile. She's seen that dazed, dreamy look before. That's the look of someone who's just remembered the last time they smelled something so nice, and how far away that moment felt. So you lather. And oh, it's a gentle thing. No flashy bubbles, just smooth circles, and the warm glide of scent and memory. The room around you fades. The gossip softens into background hum. And the only thing you're thinking now is, I should have started with this bar. Maybe bought an extra. Maybe 5. You're sitting now, nestled between the steam-softened stone benches, your fingers tracing the faint curve of a centuries-old etching left by some long-departed bathhouse regular. Maybe he was bored. Maybe she was lovesick. Maybe they just wanted to leave a mark in a world where most things, including skin cells and secrets, got scrubbed away. All around you, the murmurs swell again. But this time, they drift in a different direction. Less about who's marrying whom or what the governor's wife did with that Venetian fabric, and more about remedies. You catch snippets, strange ones. Dried beetle powder. Crushed apricot pits. Infusions made from moss or old copper coins. Welcome to the delightfully questionable world of hamam health advice. Because yes, in the 1500s, Ottoman bathhouses weren't just gossip hubs or soap showrooms. They were unofficial clinics. A place to nurse aches, unburden humors, and try out your cousin's neighbor's grandmother's recipe for whatever was currently throbbing, itching, or swelling. For starters, there's the sweating. Ottoman physicians, drawing from Greco-Arabic traditions like those of Galen and Avicenna, deeply believed in the balance of bodily humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Too much of one. You might get cranky, or rashy, or suddenly convinced your neighbor was hexing your tomatoes. The steam room, therefore, wasn't just a luxury, it was a tool. An equalizer. A slow cooker for rebalancing the internal stew. You lie back, let the heat drape over you like a second skin, and recall the first thing you heard when you entered the bathhouse. Don't stay in the hot room too long, or your spleen will sulk. It sounds absurd, but that was the wisdom. Too much sweating? You might faint. Not enough? You'd retain sad vapors, which no one wanted. Sad vapors ruined weddings. One woman across the room whispers about a special phenyl and anise tonic that, when drunk before entering the hamam, ensures your body sweats out grief. Another insists on inhaling steam steeped with crushed cinnamon bark and cloves, said to purge heartache. Whether it worked or not, historians still argue whether these rituals had placebo effects or genuine therapeutic outcomes. But when someone swears their cousin stopped dreaming of her ex after a good steam and clove sniff, you don't question it. You write it down. Many bathgoers brought along their own medicinal kits. Small pouches tied to their waist wraps, filled with crumbled herbs, ground resins, even dried lizards or beetles. Yes, really. The dried beetle powder, usually crushed with sandalwood, was applied behind the knees to chase away lethargy. It smelled terrible, but if you looked peppy afterward, no one cared. Some swore by pomegranate peel steeped in warm water, an internal cleanser, supposedly, and a cure for stubborn thoughts. Others rubbed their joints with goat tallow mixed with vinegar, which sounds like the start of a bad stew, but was considered a powerful remedy for stiffness and marital disappointment. Probably the stiffness more than the disappointment, but who's keeping track? There were even specific sick days at some hammams, days when people with mild ailments were encouraged to come in and soak their troubles away. Not contagious ailments, mind you. There were limits. No one wanted to catch medieval pink eye in a steamy room. But headaches, minor infections, melancholy, or digestive excesses? All welcome. Staff would tailor the steam levels, adjust the water heat, even offer decoctions made from quince or celery root. A particularly memorable remedy involved rubbing egg yolk mixed with lemon juice onto the scalp, letting it bake a little in the heat, then rinsing it out with chamomile-infused water. It supposedly strengthened the hair and protected the mind. Whether the mind appreciated being cooked like a soft omelet is debatable, but it made for shiny curls. At the very least, it was hard to focus on your midlife crisis when your head smelled like brunch. There were also the skeletal adjustments, performed not by trained physicians, but by the strongest women in the bath. Hamam bone setters, some called them. They'd pop joints back into place with a twist and a slap, and usually an enthusiastic yell. No anesthesia, just tradition and faith. One 16th century traveler described being gently steam tenderized, then brutally reassembled by a woman named Fatma the Elbow. He left with straighter shoulders and an enduring fear of assertive masseuses. And we can't forget the drinks. In between sweating sessions, bathers often sipped on herbal concoctions designed to restore what the steam borrowed. Licorice root for throat clarity, tamarind water for cooling, boiled pear juice spiked with vinegar to quiet the liver. That last one sounds horrifying, but was oddly popular. You take a sip of something sweet and tart now, passed to you in a ceramic cup by a kindly older woman who tells you, in hushed tones, that it's her secret for dreaming of peaceful places. You smile. You pretend to understand. You sip. It's indescribable. A flavor that lingers somewhere between cough syrup and regret. But your limbs feel looser. And that counts for something. Health in the Ottoman bathhouse wasn't just physical. It was social, spiritual, and emotional. You came to cleanse, yes, but also to be seen, to belong, to exchange advice and listen to someone's cousin's tale of miraculous recovery. And maybe, just maybe, you walked out a little shinier, a little lighter, a little more convinced that powdered oyster shells might just cure your recurring anxiety. Now, as you recline against the cool marble edge of the basin, your pulse slow, your eyes heavy-lidded, you hear someone mention a new method, soaking dried melon rinds in rose water and pressing them onto the temples to ease recurring indecision. You don't even blink. You just nod. Makes sense, you whisper. The steam curls around you like a cat that knows it owns the room. Somewhere behind you, a giggle bursts, then muffles quickly, as if someone just told a particularly scandalous story involving a stolen scarf, a misread love letter, or perhaps a surprise elopement to Edirna. But you don't turn around. You're busy now. You're being exfoliated within an inch of your life. Welcome to the Kesa experience. That's the scrubbing mitt, often made of coarse silk or goat hair, that the nader, or attendant, is currently wielding like a polite but determined sandblaster. She's not mad at you. She's just doing her job. You lie on the warm marble slab, belly down, arms sprawled, thinking about absolutely nothing. Or at least, you were, until she started working on your calves like they insulted her mother. But honestly, it feels great. In that, I might not survive this, but I'll die polished sort of way. Every hammam visit included this moment, the exfoliation. It wasn't optional. It wasn't gentle. And it certainly wasn't quick. The Ottoman ideal of cleanliness was not just about visible dirt. It was about moral clarity. A good scrub wasn't just good hygiene. It was almost spiritual. And if that required removing half your epidermis, so be it. The process began with softening. You've already steamed, soaked, and sweated for close to an hour now. Your skin is pliant. Your pores are weeping. Your soul is probably halfway to blissful evaporation. That's when she arrives, towel draped, confident, and wielding her mitt. She starts with the back. Long, sweeping strokes. No soap yet, just water and friction. It's less of a massage and more of an archaeological dig. Layers come off. Grayish curls of former you start rolling down your sides. You catch sight of one and briefly wonder if that was the regret from skipping quince syrup last Tuesday. Probably. Next, the arms. You wince once. Elbow skin is sensitive, but she doesn't pause. She's on a mission. You are her canvas. And her medium is raw determination. Now, to be fair, this isn't punishment. It's affection. Intimate, even. Many regulars had a favorite nader, someone who knew their skin quirks, their gossip preferences, and the perfect balance between enthusiastic scrubbing and please don't remove my freckles. Relationships were built here, slowly, over years of shared steam and trusted abrasions. For the Ottomans, exfoliation wasn't just cosmetic. It was preventive care. Removing dead skin was thought to unclog the doors of the body, pathways where good energy entered and bad humors exited. Historians still argue whether these metaphors were rooted in early Islamic medical theory or just really convincing grandmothers. Either way, they stuck. There were even seasonal techniques. In winter, scrubs were more vigorous, designed to shake off stagnation. In spring, they might be lighter, paired with floral oils. And in summer, just hope your nader had good aim and didn't miss that one mosquito bite from last night. Because she'll find it and exfoliate it into next week. And then comes the soap. She dips a long cotton bag, filled with suds from olive oil soap, into a basin, swings it gracefully in the air, then squeezes. A cloud of foam cascades onto your back, like a slow-motion avalanche. It's warm. It's silky. It smells faintly of lemons and old-world dreams. She uses it to glide over your freshly awakened skin, massaging now, gentler, in wide circles. You're no longer being sanded. You're being basted. Like a sleepy lamb roast about to enter the final stages of bliss. You can hear her humming. It's tuneless, calming, a melody that might be as old as the bathhouse itself. And all around, you realize it's happening in parallel. Every marble slab hosting someone else's exfoliation saga. A symphony of scrubbing. Steam rising. Sighs released. Buckets sloshed. Life sloughed off. Of course, not everyone loved this part. Foreign travelers often wrote with horror about the scraping and the aggressive towel choreography. One French merchant in 1572 swore he lost half his body weight and 2 freckles he was fond of. He never went back. His loss. But locals? They planned their weeks around this. Post-scrub, the sense of euphoria was real. Ottoman poets even wrote about it, comparing the feeling to moral rebirth, to being washed clean not just of sweat and dust, but of envy, jealousy, and poorly executed dinner parties. You sit up slowly now, dazed and gleaming like a human peach. The nader offers you a cloth towel. You nod in exhausted gratitude, even though you're pretty sure your arms have been replaced by noodles. As you're led gently to the rinsing alcove, someone passes by and compliments your glow. You smile. It's not you, it's the friction, but it still counts. The soap clings to you a moment longer before warm water cascades from above, sluicing away the last bits of lather and lingering embarrassment. You're clean now. Or at least, you're cleaner than you've been since age 5. There's a lightness to your step as you walk back to the central hall. Your skin hums with its own applause. You slide back onto the heated marble, wrapped in fresh towels, heart thudding in lazy time. Someone nearby is receiving their own exfoliation now. You hear the slap of the mitt. A little yelp. A laugh. You close your eyes and drift. The towel on your head has slipped slightly, but you're far too relaxed to fix it. You're reclining now, in the cooling room, also known as the sogakluk, where light filters through small stained glass windows, casting lazy patches of color on the tiled floor. You can't quite tell if your fingers are pruny from the water or just from being incredibly content. This is where things slow down. The scrubbing is done, the gossip has reached a gentle simmer, and now it's time for the quiet indulgence of oils and perfumes. Yes, your skin is glowing, but as any 16th century Ottoman bathhouse regular would tell you, what's the point of being freshly exfoliated if you don't oil up afterward? A female attendant approaches with a small copper tray. On it are tiny glass bottles filled with golden, rose-tinted, and emerald green oils. You eye them like a sleepy sommelier. Will it be the fig-infused sesame oil? Or perhaps the more decadent blend of musk and cinnamon bark, favored by women of the palace? Today, you're feeling like a garden after rain. Something floral. She gently rubs the oil into your arms, legs, and shoulders, using both palms in slow, practiced circles. The motion is rhythmic, almost meditative. The scent is intoxicating, but not overwhelming. A whisper of roses, a hint of crushed herbs. And in this state, half-oiled, half-dreaming, you begin to notice the sense of the room itself. The faint char of burning wood from the furnace. The soap still hanging in the air. Someone nearby is chewing cloves, releasing their peppery sweetness into the shared atmosphere. You overhear a whisper, two women trading perfume recipes. Lavender steeped in almond oil, but only for 7 days. Any more, and it smells like old shoes. You're thinking of your uncle's shoes. The lavender is innocent. Laughter, the safe, enclosed kind that stays within these walls. The bathhouse was a place where women spoke freely. Social classes blurred more here than almost anywhere else in the empire. A merchant's wife might be seated beside the daughter of a baker. A concubine from the palace might gossip with a laundress. Once you were inside, once the towels were on and the steam had worked its magic, titles didn't matter nearly as much as who brought the best rose syrup. And perfume. Perfume was a language in itself. Ottoman women took pride in their personal scent blends. You didn't just smell like the soap you used. You chose a signature, something that whispered before you entered a room. Recipes were handed down like heirlooms, sometimes even kept secret from daughters-in-law. Can't have the new girl outshining grandma. Some perfumes had medicinal uses too. Myrtle oil was believed to calm nervous spirits. Rose was for the heart. Clove was good for bad breath and chatty neighbors. And ambergris? Well, historians still argue whether its popularity came from genuine love of its scent or just bragging rights. As the oiling continues, the attendant hums softly. You recognize the tune. It's one you've heard earlier, during the scrubbing. But now, it's slower, more like a lullaby. Her hands move with the music. You feel like dough being gently prepared for a very important pastry. Across the room, a woman is sipping something from a tiny porcelain cup. Turkish coffee, thick and dark as ink. But yours is different. You're handed a tulip-shaped glass of sherbet, a chilled sweet drink made with sour cherry, violet syrup, or pomegranate. It's tart and refreshing, cutting through the lingering warmth like a breeze through gauze curtains. Sherbet was more than just a treat. It was a marker of taste, of hospitality. Recipes were competitive. Some included rose petals and saffron. Others used tamarind and crushed ice. One woman near you swears by green almond and cinnamon. You sip slowly, trying to remember the flavor so you can describe it later, knowing full well you never will. This is not a place you describe. It's a place you feel. The oil has now fully soaked in. Your skin is practically gleaming. You shift positions and feel the marble's warmth cling to your shoulder blades. Every surface of you is hydrated, perfumed, softened to the consistency of moonlight. And you realize something strange. You don't want to leave. Not yet. Of course, you know you must. The outer world exists. Somewhere beyond these walls, someone is loudly haggling over goat cheese, and a rooster is plotting its fifth crow of the morning. But that world is for later. Right now, you are made of roses, steam, and slight smugness. It wasn't all luxury, though. There were rules. Strict codes of conduct, even in this steamy haven. Bathhouse attendants had hierarchies. Water was rationed during droughts. And not every town could afford to keep their hamam in pristine shape. Some travelers reported cracked tiles, leaking domes, or the faint whiff of mold behind the furnace room. Still, for most Ottoman women, this place was one of the few spaces in their lives that felt like theirs. A pocket of autonomy in a tightly structured society. You hear a small splash. Someone's dropped a silver bracelet into the rinse basin. She laughs and leaves it. It'll be found later, probably added to the growing unofficial lost and found collection some naders kept under their benches. Rumors say one of them used to trade forgotten jewelry for perfume ingredients. But no one really minds. Everything lost here seems to find its way back in some form. Your eyes close now, the soft oil still warm against your skin, your stomach content with sherbet, and your mind half lulled by the lullaby of water trickles and muffled chatter. Outside, the sun is probably climbing. But in here, time moves sideways. You'll rise soon, rewrap your towel, maybe join a few women in the antechamber for one last gossip before parting ways. Someone will tell you about a merchant who's smuggling nutmeg, and someone else will speculate that the Sultan's new favorite smells suspiciously of lemongrass. But that's for later. Right now, you are just a being of steam and serenity. Slightly oily, deeply peaceful, and, if we're being honest, already plotting your next visit. Someone gently taps the side of your foot. It's time to move. Not in a rushed, jarring sort of way, but with the gentle insistence of a cloud nudging you downstream. You rise from the marble slab like steam off a tea glass and wrap your towel tighter. It's damp and warm from your hours in the bath, but comforting in a way that dry things never quite are. You shuffle toward the small chamber just before the exit, the dressing room, or soymalik. Here, the ambience is different. The warmth lingers, but there's a hint of draft now, a reminder that you're approaching the edge of the dream. Attendants bustle about softly, offering bundles of dry towels, combs, and sometimes, if you're particularly lucky, a small silver mirror. You catch a glimpse of yourself. You look radiant. Also, faintly ridiculous, with your pinkish cheeks and slightly flattened hair. But in this space, vanity is a welcome indulgence. Everyone here is glowing, giggling, and more than a little pruny. Now comes the subtle pageantry of dressing. Robes are unfurled like stage curtains. Embroidered slippers are slipped on with flair. Some women take their time, arranging each layer with precision. Others toss on their clothes as if racing a storm. Both are valid. You find yourself somewhere in the middle, savoring the moment, but also half dreaming of the nap that awaits you at home. As you slide into your linen underdress, still warm from where it was resting near the furnace, you notice the small embroidery near the hem, a pattern of pomegranates. You'd almost forgotten. Your mother stitched it in when she gifted it to you, whispering something about fertility, sweetness, and good fortune. You smile. That was years ago, and the hem is a little frayed now, but it still holds. Around you, women are still chatting. Today's hot topic? A new market stall near the aqueducts that claims to sell Suleiman's favorite soap. No one quite believes it, but everyone agrees it's worth checking out, especially if the vendor throws in free samples. Soap wasn't just soap in 16th century Istanbul. It was identity. Women had preferences: olive oil, goat tallow, laurel, or even ashes mixed with honey for a particularly earthy feel. The recipes varied by region, by budget, even by personality. A fiery-tempered woman might swear by clove and pepper soap, while someone more dreamy preferred chamomile and lavender. Some bathers made their own at home, crafting bricks of cleansing glory wrapped in linen and tied with twine. Others splurged on imported varieties from Aleppo or Damascus, which arrived in heavy bundles and made your laundry smell like heaven. Of course, historians still argue whether the fanciest soaps were ever used in the hammam itself, or reserved strictly for weddings and dowry trunks. The truth? Probably both. People are complicated, even in bubbles and steam. Back in the Soyanmalik, an older woman tells a story about the time her cousin mixed lemon balm with too much sulfur and nearly caused a small fire in the communal oven. Everyone laughs. She shrugs and says, her skin was radiant, though, like a pearl, just slightly explosive. As you fasten your sash and slip on your outer coat, a younger girl beside you struggles with a tangle in her hair. Without a word, her neighbor reaches over and begins to gently comb it out with fingers dipped in rose oil. The girl doesn't flinch. This is a bathhouse ritual too, part grooming, part silent affection. And now you're dressed, wrapped, prepared to step out into the sunlight. But something holds you back. You're not quite ready to break the spell. You glance at the shelves by the door. On them, small pouches of lavender, sachets of dried orange peel, carved wooden combs, and tiny glass bottles filled with the same oils used during the massage. You purchase a small one, just enough rose oil to perfume your pillow for a week. The nader winks at you. Next time, we'll try sandalwood. Very seductive, very subtle. You blush, then blame the steam, clearly still lingering in your system. Outside the door, the soundscape shifts. Distant footsteps. The call of a merchant. Somewhere, a rooster is aggressively asserting his dominance over breakfast. The spell begins to unravel, but gently. As you step onto the cool stone threshold, blinking into the light, a breeze curls past your ear like a whispered secret. You can smell bread baking. The faint hiss of a distant boat cutting across the Bosphorus. The city is waking, stretching its limbs. And yet, you don't quite feel like a part of it. Not yet. You've been somewhere else. Somewhere timeless. Somewhere warm and slightly damp, where people speak freely, skin glows, and soap is both art and alchemy. Someone brushes past you with a bundle of clean towels. She smells like sandalwood and lemon peel. Maybe next time, you'll try that blend. But for now, you pull your cloak tighter and begin your slow walk home. Past the fountain, past the fig vendor setting up his stall, past the pigeon who seems unusually interested in your slippers. Back into your own life, but softer, smoother, slightly oilier. You catch your reflection in a shop window and do a double take. Who is that luminous creature with the good posture and the mildly smug expression? It's you, obviously, but elevated. There's a saying whispered among bathhouse women. You come in with the world on your back. You leave with just a towel, and maybe a tiny bottle of rose oil. You shuffle back through the cobbled streets of Istanbul, your limbs buoyant and lazy, like they've just remembered how to be part of your body. Each step has that peculiar floating feeling you only get after a long soak. Your skin loose and warm, your joints moving like oiled hinges. The city around you is beginning to stir now, but you, dear listener, are moving through it like a ghost. Children skip past with bundles of bread, and their shouts seem to ripple the air rather than pierce it. You spot a man on a stool plucking a saz, eyes closed, fingers dancing over the strings with the sort of confidence only someone who's played the same 3 songs every morning for 20 years could possibly possess. You cross in front of a small mosque, and a cat, stretched long and elegant as a noodle, claims the sunniest patch of stone just outside the gate. She blinks at you, unimpressed, then goes back to sleep. You envy her. As you approach your neighborhood, the smell of lemon and crushed herbs drifts from open windows. Someone's cleaning day has begun. That scent, probably soap residue from the hamam, or perhaps the strong mint and vinegar mixture used to scrub courtyards. Not quite your rose and bay leaf blend, but respectable. You finally reach your door and slip inside. Home. The contrast hits you immediately. The hamam was warm and round, like a womb. Your home is angular, quieter, a touch colder. But it's yours. The walls recognize your breath. And now comes perhaps the most critical ritual of all, post-hamam lounging. You settle onto a cushion by the window, your robe soft against your skin, a fresh glass of sherbet in your hand. It's sour cherry today, your favorite. Sweet, tangy, just sharp enough to remind you you're alive. The glass is etched, delicate. You trace its rim with your finger. It makes a faint musical ping, almost like a bell far off in the mist. Your mother used to say this was the moment when the soul catches up to the body. After the scrubbing, the rinsing, the gossip, and the perfume, this quiet return. That liminal hour where nothing is demanded of you, not even thought. So you sit, and time slows. If you listen closely, you can still hear the echoes of the bathhouse, the low murmur of women's voices, the splash of a bucket, the faint slipper slap of an attendant disappearing into steam. These sounds have followed you, like invisible perfume. You think of the other women now, going about their days. Some will take a nap. Others will start baking. A few might sneak off to visit a sister, clutching leftover soap wrapped in cloth. 1 or 2 are probably already scribbling fresh rumors into their journals, if such a thing exists. Historians still argue whether Ottoman women truly had idle lives, as some Western travelers sniffed in their accounts, or whether they ran vast, complex social and domestic networks beneath the surface. You, having just seen a room full of bathers coordinate massages, marriages, and mischief while also achieving optimal exfoliation, are leaning toward the latter. Your eyes drift to your little pouch of rose oil. Just a few drops left. You uncork it carefully and dab some behind each ear. The scent blossoms in the still air like a memory. And then, because you are still riding the slow, contented rhythm of the bathhouse, you begin to hum. It's an old tune, something your grandmother sang when steeping herbs for hair rinse. No words, just notes that rise and fall like steam curling from a kettle. You feel good. Not just clean, but balanced. Lightly marinated. Maybe even wise. You recall an elder in the Soyamalik whispering. Soap clears the skin. Gossip clears the soul. She said it while picking lint off her friend's shoulder, completely serious. You didn't question it then, and you certainly don't now. Outside, the world continues. The baker sells flatbread. The fishmonger dumps ice. Someone tries to herd 3 donkeys up a flight of stairs, which, frankly, seems optimistic. But inside, you are a small planet orbiting no one. Just a slow, warm sphere of calm and soft skin. Your dog pads over and sniffs your feet suspiciously. He doesn't recognize this polished, gleaming version of you. You assure him it's still you, just smoother. Then you remember something. A story from the bathhouse you didn't quite finish hearing. Something about a baker's wife who discovered an entirely new soap recipe by mistake. She left her olive oil too close to the fire, added lemon by accident, and ended up with a bar that made her skin glow like moonlight. You resolve to ask for the full tale next week. And maybe the recipe. In fact, you're already planning your next visit. Next Thursday, perhaps? Or sooner, if the itch for warmth and rose oil becomes too strong. You imagine yourself arriving again, wrapped in a towel, greeted with smiles and steam. The marble slab will remember your shape. But for now, you sip your sherbet and settle deeper into your cushion. You've earned this moment of nothingness, of soft muscles and even softer thoughts. It's not glamorous. It's not Instagrammable. But it is, quietly, perfectly divine. And somewhere, not far from you, a woman is sliding onto her own slab of warm marble, sighing deeply and thinking the same thing. The city hums around you. But inside your room, it's still steam time. Still soft. Still slow. The sun begins to angle lower, its golden wash slipping across your walls like a drowsy cat, slow and warm. And you, dear listener, drift with it. Eyes half-lidded, body still held together by the magic geometry of soap, steam, and just the right number of gossip nuggets to tide you over until next week. But there's one last tale clinging to the folds of your towel. One that flits into your mind now, like a sparrow darting through steam. It starts with a pair of slippers. Not yours, but an old, soft pair belonging to a hamam worker named Layla. She's not a bather. Not one of the elegant, perfumed ladies reclining like silk scarves on marble slabs. No, Layla is part of the invisible machinery. She scrubs tiles, boils water, washes out linen, and most importantly, she listens. Quietly, carefully. And oh, the story she gathers. Each woman who stumbles in, flushed from market errands or household arguments, thinks she's only telling a friend about her mother-in-law's overcooked eggplant or her suspicions about the neighbor's new ring. But they're all speaking to Layla, really. Because Layla, while crouching by the fire pit or hanging damp cloths to dry, remembers everything. She's what modern folks might call a human archive. Now, here's the delicious part. Once a month, Layla holds court, though never officially. It's not a formal event. Just a quiet moment at the end of the day, when the last bather has gone, and only candlelight dapples the misty air. She sits by the water basin, wrings out her rag one last time, and begins to talk. Not in her voice, but in theirs. Reenacting, retelling, remixing. Her favorite story? The one about the woman who believed that her dreams were premonitions, specifically, dreams involving cucumbers. According to her, if she dreamt of slicing cucumbers, a marriage proposal was imminent. If the cucumbers were pickled, someone in her circle would be caught in a lie. Raw and whole. Financial luck. You couldn't make this up. Except she probably did. Now, historians still argue whether oral storytelling inside hammams was a deliberate cultural tradition or simply a happy byproduct of bored women soaking in a fragrant echo chamber. What is certain, though, is that these bathhouse tales had their own peculiar rhythm, a pacing like waves lapping marble. They weren't rushed. They lingered. They wound their way from topic to topic like tendrils of steam curling under a wooden door. And Layla, unofficial curator of bathhouse gossip, was a master conductor of these sleepy symphonies. Sometimes, a tale would spark laughter that echoed off domes and tiles, bouncing like coins down a well. Other times, women would fall into hushes so thick that even the fire crackled more gently. A tale about a midwife who delivered twins in total silence. Out of superstition, supposedly. Another about a bottle of soap oil passed between 5 generations of women, still used once a year for good luck. Each time, Layla added a new thread, a new detail, like embroidery stitched into memory. You close your eyes now, imagining the flickering light on the walls, the scent of sandalwood clinging to damp air. Somewhere, a bucket drips, in no particular hurry. Somewhere else, a woman murmurs a prayer into the curved belly of a brass basin. And as for you, you're still wrapped in the warmth of the day's stories. In your mind, you begin to assemble your own version of the tale. Maybe you'll tell it next time. Maybe you'll become a Layla, too, listening in the background, remembering, reimagining. And oh, the slippers. Let's not forget the slippers. Laylas were famous, patched in 3 different fabrics, the left one slightly bigger than the right. Supposedly, if you wore them and made a wish under your breath while stepping onto the hot slab, the wish would come true by the time your skin wrinkled. Absurd? Yes. But what else is a hammam if not a place where absurdity and sincerity share a basin? Soap and legend, poured from the same ladle. You picture the slippers now, resting near the steam room. One toe slightly curled upward like their mid-giggle. You smile. The kind of lazy, sleepy smile that barely lifts your cheeks. And you wonder, just a little, what Layla would say about you. What story she'd tell about the one who came to the bath, bathed in rose and lemon, and left humming softly with sherbet on her breath. Would you be the mysterious type? The romantic? The one who claims she's just here for the soap, but always listens very carefully when marriages are mentioned? You shift your weight, and the cushion exhales underneath you. Time drips again. A sleepy rhythm. The kind that makes you lose track of where story ends and real life resumes. The hammam is both gone and not gone. It clings to your skin like the last drops of lavender water drying on your wrist. And Layla? She's still there, scrubbing a tile, tucking your tail into the folds of her memory. She'll tell it soon, after the others leave. Just as the candles gutter low and the coals begin their final sigh. You're still wrapped in that mental towel, soft and warm from the steam, when your mind drifts, slowly, gently, toward the more tangible side of the hammam experience. All the talk, the tales, the suds and sandalwood. But what about the architecture? The bones of this beautiful beast? You can't have centuries of secrets without walls to catch them, after all. So tonight, still blinking slow in the warm mist of your imaginary bath, you tilt your gaze up. And there it is. The dome. Always the dome. A vast, silent canopy pocked with little glass bubbles, oculi, designed to let daylight pour in like honey through a sieve. Each circle of light falls in dappled pools on the marble, and if you've ever watched dust dance through a sunbeam in a quiet room, you can picture it. Except here, it's not dust, it's steam. Shimmering, shape-shifting steam. Floating like soft ghosts who forgot they were supposed to leave. Ottoman architects were serious about their domes. The hammam's main dome, usually resting over the central hot room, the harem, didn't just look good, it was acoustically tuned. So yes, your giggles, your gossip, and that one sneeze you tried to hold and all bounce upward, swirl, and return to you a few seconds later like a very judgmental echo. Architecturally speaking, these domes drew inspiration from both Byzantine and Persian traditions, but with a uniquely Ottoman flair. And this wasn't just about showmanship. Hot air rises, as you know, so a tall dome keeps the space breathable. That might not sound revolutionary to us now, lounging with fans in AIC, but back in the 1500s, avoiding steam suffocation was a big win. And now, imagine this. Beneath your feet, an entire underworld of furnaces, called kulhan, churned away, heating vast copper boilers of water and radiating warmth up through hollow walls and channels. Like veins carrying liquid fire. It was these kulhanjis, the furnace keepers, who were perhaps the unsung heroes of the hammam. Their job was, well, let's say less than fragrant. They tended fires from pre-dawn until after dark, sweat pouring, soot clinging, and all without much glory. And yet, without them, no steam, no heat, no warm slabs to sprawl on. Historians still debate whether kulhanjis were respected or just pitted. Some accounts say they were considered unlucky to touch due to their association with fire and ash. Others suggest they were seen as protectors, essential to the bathhouse's soul, like custodians of an ancient sun. Then there's the water system itself. No faucets, obviously. Just a brilliant blend of gravity and engineering. Cold water from a rooftop cistern, hot water from the furnace, both routed through brass taps into the bathing basins, where you'd mix them by hand like an alchemist working on your perfect soak. Let's not forget the tiles. You'd expect pristine white marble everywhere. And yes, there was plenty, but many hammams were decorated with blue and white Iznik tiles, covered in curling vines and tulips, and those ever-watchful Ottoman eyes, warding off envy or evil spirits. They weren't just for looks. The glaze was so fine that soap scum had a hard time sticking. Practical beauty, Ottoman specialty. You shift in your imaginary seat again, running a finger over one of those tiles. It's still warm from the day's baths, still humming with the residue of whispers and laughter. There's a small alcove carved into the wall nearby. Maybe it's holding a jar of rose soap, or perhaps a brass bowl for rinsing. You're not sure. That's the joy of the bathhouse. You never really have to know. You just are. Your senses dim now, like a room with the candles slowly pinched out, one by one. But before we go, one final image to hold on to. Picture a woman, maybe in her 50s. Silver hair twisted into a braid. She's been coming here since she was a girl, brought in by her mother, who was brought in by her mother. Her joints ache a little now, but in the hamam, she's light again. The heat unfurls her bones. The quiet kindness of the space offers her more than comfort. It offers memory, connection, and continuity. She knows which marble bench collects the warmest water. She knows which brass tap whistles when turned too quickly. She knows the best time to arrive, when the day's heat is peaking and the dome glows like a lantern. She sits, breathing in slow steam, eyes half closed. If you asked her how long she's been here, she might say an hour, or a lifetime, because time bends inside the hamam. The walls remember, the water forgets, and you're just another thread in the soft fabric of centuries. Now close your eyes and listen, not to me, but to the marble, to the echo above you, to the water dripping from your own elbow. Soft, slow, and perfect. You exhale slowly, almost without realizing it, as if your whole body has slouched into the heat. At this point in the evening, or maybe it's a dream, you're not sure where you are in the bathhouse anymore. The architecture melts into mood, the history into steam, and time itself feels a bit sudsy and strange. You're not in the hot room, the warm room, or even the cooling room anymore. You're somewhere else entirely. A secret part of the hamam most visitors never see. This is the realm of the attendants. Not the masseuses, not the scrubbers, but the people who work behind the velvet. Well, damp linen, curtain. The bathhouse caretakers, matchmakers, story carriers, and yes, even the local spies. See, while Ottoman hammams were technically gender segregated and time scheduled accordingly, the Gazku Kadinler, the watchwomen, always knew who was who, when they came, and how long they lingered. If someone started arriving too often, too dressed up, or too smiley, the gossip mill turned. You'd better believe it was the attendants who set it spinning. And the best of them? The true veterans? They were discreet and lethal with a side eye. But this section isn't about politics or intrigue. It's about the rhythm of their days, the rituals behind the rituals. Long before bathers arrived, these women would sweep the warm marble with wet cloths, mix bundles of herbs into rinse buckets, chamomile, thyme, lavender if the garden had been generous, and fold fresh towels so neatly they looked like pastries. Some would grind soapstones into fine powder to mix into exfoliating pastes. Others steeped orange peels and cloves in copper pots for that lingering scent in the air. It was a quiet choreography. No audience. No applause. Just a deep, worn-in pride. One older attendant, let's call her Zara, had worked the same hamam for nearly 40 years. Never missed a Tuesday. She didn't gossip much, except with the cats, and she always brought 2 extra lemons in her pouch, one to scent the air, the other to suck on in private while she rested her feet behind the water boiler. Historians still argue whether attendants like Zara saw themselves as servants or guardians. Some records hint at fierce inter-bathhouse rivalries, where gossip was currency, and each team took pride in having the cleanest domes or the most fragrant basin water. Others suggest the job was just a job, demanding, hot, unpaid on religious holidays, and marked by a high turnover of sore feet and cracked fingers. But whatever their personal feelings, the invisible network of bathhouse workers kept Ottoman urban life running. Literally, clean people were healthy people, and healthy people meant less plague, less chaos, and a society that didn't collapse in its own sweat. Their work was so essential, in fact, that even when fires or earthquakes damaged a hamam, the workers would help rebuild, scouring rubble for intact soap bowls and smoothing over cracked tiles like they were icing a cake. There was even an old superstition among hammam workers that if you whispered your troubles into a bathhouse wall while polishing it, your sorrow would be scrubbed clean too. Like emotional exfoliation. No scientific proof, obviously. But hey, who needs a therapist when you've got marble? Sometimes, late at night, a few of the younger workers would sneak back in after hours. Not for bathing, for singing. The echo was too irresistible. They'd lean against the warm tile, splash water on their ankles, and hum little folk songs to each other in harmony, waiting for the dome to toss their notes back down like applause. And now, as your eyes begin to drift shut, you think about that sound. A lullaby, muffled by steam. A melody soaked into centuries of stone. You picture the quiet, the copper bowls neatly stacked, the last wisp of citrusy steam curling up toward the dome like incense in a forgotten temple. You feel warm. Heavier, somehow, but in a good way. Like everything that needed scrubbing has been scrubbed. Even the worry behind your ears. Because in the end, the Ottoman hammam wasn't about luxury. It wasn't about status or ceremony or even hygiene, not entirely. It was about feeling human again. A place where everyone could shed their dust, loosen their backs, and rinse the ache off the week. Where no matter how tangled the outside world became, inside these warm walls, you were just a body, a breath, and a soul wrapped in soap-slick skin. And if that's not sacred, what is? And now, as the steam settles and your mind floats gently above it all, you sink even deeper into stillness. No more tile beneath your feet. No more flickering lamplight or chatter from distant basins. Just a soft hush, like warm linen being folded in a quiet room. You can still faintly smell the olive oil soap, sweet, a little earthy, and maybe there's a whisper of rosewater in the air. It clings not just to the walls of the hammam, but now, to your thoughts too, like scent-soaked dreams folded into your memory. Your breath slows to match the rhythm of ancient water dripping from carved spouts. Drip, drip. Each one a heartbeat of a world long past, but never quite gone. The women you met here, the mothers, the merchants, the workers, the wanderers, fade gently into silhouettes. Their voices become water. Their footsteps become warmth. Their secrets safe in the steam. And so, you drift, not away, but inward, deeper into yourself, where the noise thins and the softness thickens. You are calm. You are weightless. You are nowhere and everywhere at once. Let your body rest like a polished stone. Let your mind go the way of steam, up, away, vanishing into the quiet curve of sleep. No more stories tonight. Only silence, scented faintly with thyme and lemons. Only peace, padded softly in linen and thyme. You've earned this stillness. Sleep well, traveler.